Hello everybody. Today we're going to be looking at allocating and unallocating transactions within Sage 50 accounts. My name is Laura and I'm a learning facilitator here at Sage and I'm going to be hosting the webinar today. I've also got Michael on hand to answer any questions in the background as well. And we've got about half an hour booked in today and hopefully you should get a little bit of time back at the end there, just depending on how many questions we get through. So before we get started, just some housekeeping rules. So your mic will be muted automatically, but you'll see that there is a little question icon on the toolbar where you can submit any questions that you may have for Michael there. So make sure you pop them in and keep them busy. And as this is a quick learn session, it's more demonstration based, but I will be including the slides in the handout section as there are links at the end, which you might find useful. So if you do want to download those, make sure you do that during the session. And there's also a printer-friendly version if you'd like to make some notes there as well. So today I'll be giving you an introduction into how to allocate and unallocate transactions within your Sage 50 account software. Following that, I'll be going through a demonstration within the program so you can see how that works. And then I'll also provide those useful links to the guides on our help centre there. So if you'd like to further your knowledge around processing those would be good to have a look at. And then we should have some time at the end, like I say, to answer those questions as well. So allocating transactions is a way of marrying up transactions so you know that they're no longer outstanding and have been paid and won't appear on things like your age debtors or your age creditors reports. There is also a wizard function which can make things a bit quicker for you. And you can allocate payments on account to invoices along with allocating credit notes to invoices too. And there's also a function to unallocate transactions as well. So if there's been an error, you can break the link between the payment and the invoice. So what I'll do now is I'll pop into my system and we can have a look and just see how we can allocate these transactions and unallocate them if necessary. So allocating transactions, like I say, it is a way that you can process receipts and payments and then match them against invoices, allocating them to each other. So it just means that they no longer show on the account as outstanding. And what do I mean by that? So if we go into our customers module, just on the left-hand side there, and I'm just going to pick a particular customer, Morley Solicitors. Now, if we have a look here, it is showing we've got a zero balance for this particular customer on here. So it looks like they're all up to date. We've got nothing outstanding. However, if I go into reports, just at the top there, and I'm just going to run my age debtors analysis detailed report, which I've got in my favorites. And I'm just going to preview this. I'm just going to leave the criteria as it is. And I'll maximize this just so you can see that. So we can see here on the detailed age debtors analysis report, we have transactions which are actually outstanding. We've got a sales invoice and we've got a credit note on there as well. So we do actually have transactions which are outstanding. So you can have invoices and payments on the account, and it shows up to date. But when you run, say, either your age debtors or your creditors report, because you've got transactions which are not allocated, they're shown as outstanding. So I'm just going to close out of that. We'll close out of our reports window. So it's just a bit of good housekeeping really when we tidy up our transactions in the background. So we'll have a look at the activity on here first of all. So I'm just going to click on activity along the top for this customer and we'll just have a look and see what we have in here. So we can see here we have got the sales invoice. We've got it for £100, but it's showing in the outstanding column. And it's also got an asterisk next to it, which means it's fully outstanding. Just underneath this, we have our credit note, same customer, again £100 in the outstanding column, and it's shown as fully outstanding. So what we need to do is we need to allocate those together. So if I close out of this window, and we're going to go to customer receipt at the top. I'll open up this window, and I'm going to choose my customer from the drop-down box. It's going to bring those up for me in here. So we've got that sales invoice and we've got the sales credit note there. And what I'm going to do to allocate them is I'm going to pay them both in full. So I can either type the amount on my keyboard or you can use the little keypad. If I click on that, you can key it in from here. I want to do it that way, or you can also click pay in full at the top or use your F3 key on your keyboard. I'm going to pay them both in full, and what we want to make sure is that this figure here, the balance, and your analysis total, make sure that they're both showing a 0, as we're not actually recording a payment or a receipt. All we're doing is allocating them. So if I took out the figure in here, just to show you, so if I've just got that in there, we've got a figure showing in both of these. I'm not making a payment, I just want to allocate those. So I pop that back in, it goes back down to 0. And once we click save, those are then allocated. So I'm going to click save in the bottom right hand corner. And if I just go back in and show you, so I'm just going to select that customer again, we'll have nothing outstanding now. Okay, there's now nothing there. So we've got no further transactions. So if I close out this window, I'm just going to say I don't want to save any changes because I haven't made any additional changes on there. We'll go into the activity again at the top. And you'll see here we have got our invoice, no longer outstanding. And we've also got the credit note just underneath that, no longer outstanding. So in the bottom window, this shows our splits. So it shows what's allocated to the transactions. So our top line is the one that we have highlighted. So this is our sales invoice. And then underneath that, we can see that the sales credit note 1580, just shown here, has been allocated to it. So we know that it's been paid with that credit note. The same would be if we click on the credit note underneath, it'll show the credit note on the top line. And we know that that has been used to pay off our sales invoice 1579, which is this transaction here. Close out of that window. We'll have a look at another customer on here. So let's have a look at, we'll look at Stephen Stevenson on here as well. So if we click on customer receipt, actually we'll go into the activity first of all. So I'll just unhighlight Morley Solicitors. So Stephen Stevenson, I'm going to click on activity at the top. We'll just have a look and see what we have showing in here. So we have a sales invoice for £250. That's fully outstanding. We've got an asterisk just to say that it's fully outstanding. And we've got a sales credit note on here as well, £50, which is outstanding. And we've got the asterisk as well, so it's shown as fully outstanding. So we'll have a look and see how we allocate these together, one being less than the other. So if I click close to that window there, and I'm just going to go to customer receipt again at the top, and I'm just going to select that customer in the drop down box. And we can see we've got that sales invoice and that credit note there. So for in here, I want to allocate £50 to my invoice, which is £250. So I'm going to be paying my credit note in full. So I can click on F3 at the top. And then for this one, we're going to be exactly the same. So we need these figures to match. So remember, this needs to be 0 in the bottom right-hand corner, this analysis total, to be allocating those payments. So if I key in £50, tap across, you can see that goes down to 0 now. So I'm allocating that credit note to that invoice, which will reduce this invoice amount down to £200. So if I click save in the bottom left-hand corner, and I'll just bring that customer up again now, just so we can see what that does. And now we only have our sales invoice because the credit note's no longer outstanding. And we now have an amount of £200 left to pay for this one. It's reduced it by that credit note amount of £50 there. So we'll close out with that and we'll have a look at that in the activity as well. So now if I highlight the sales invoice line, we have a look across the line. So the original invoice was for £250. In the outstanding column, we've got £200 left. And in the column where the asterisk was before, we have a P, and the P stands for part paid. So we know that something's paid part of that off. And we know what's paid that off by looking in the splits in the bottom. So we've got our sales invoice line, the one that we have highlighted. And then just underneath that, we have got our sales, the credit note on there. And we know it was for £50. And we can tie that back to the top line. So we know it was the credit 1582, which is this line here. And we've now no longer got that outstanding, that's been allocated. We'll have a look at suppliers as well. If we go into, we'll have a look at Le Vineyard. We'll have a look at the activity in here. And in here, we can see we've got 3 transactions which are outstanding. Just at a glance on here, we can see they're fully outstanding. We have got a purchase invoice, just go along the line for £200, fully outstanding. The next line down, we've got another invoice for £250. And then we've got also a payment on account, so it might be paid a deposit for that, and that's for £100 on there. And you can see that's fully outstanding as well. So I'll have a look at allocating those. So if I come out of this window, and I'm just going to click on supplier payment at the top this time. I'm going to choose my supplier from the drop-down box. We've got these 3 transactions in here. So I want to pay my £100. I'm going to allocate my payment on account to the invoice on the top, which will reduce that one. So if I key in 100, or you can click pay in full for that one. And remember, we need this box down here is 0, and I'm going to key in 100 on there to have that along. So that will leave an outstanding balance on this one of £100, and it will allocate that to that invoice for us. So I'm going to click save to that. And we'll just have a quick look and see what that does to it within this window. If I go back into my supplier there, we can now see that we've just got £100 left outstanding, and that payment on account is no longer there. So we'll have a look in the activity, because there is something else we'll have a look at just after this as well. And if I go into the activity for this one, we can now see, I highlight that line. So the invoice that I've allocated that payment on account to, so it was for £200, it's now for £100, and it's been part paid. The invoice below, that's not been touched. We didn't do anything with that one, still fully outstanding. And the payment on account underneath that, that's no longer outstanding because that's been allocated to this invoice. Now, if I decide that actually that payment on account should have been for this invoice, so if I've made a mistake and I've allocated it to the wrong one, there is a way of unallocating it as well. So what we can do is we can highlight the payment on account, which we've got there, and along the top here, we've got an unallocate transaction option. So if I click on that, it's going to give me a pop-up box that'll say, do you want to unallocate this transaction? This option unallocates all associated transactions. So if I had more than one transaction that was attached to a particular line on here, it would unallocate them all for me, freeing me up to allocate them again. So if I click yes to that, it'll jump around a little bit. And then we can see now we're back to where we started. All 3 lines are outstanding. We have got a cancelled line just underneath here, just to let us know that that initial allocation has been cancelled. And that's the same on the payment invoice as well. So we've still got that on there too, but they're all outstanding. So if I close this window, and if I go back to supplier payment at the top, I'm going to click on the account. And it brings them all back up again. So now I can go back in and I can allocate them there. So I'm going to type in my £100 for this one. I'm going to allocate it to this line here. Tab across. We've got 0 in this window down here, and it leaves a balance on the customer's account of £350, which is correct. So I'm going to say save to that. We'll just pop back in just to show you what that looks like in here in Le Vineyard. And that payment on account is now gone, and it's reduced this invoice by £100 this time. So if there is a mistake, you can unallocate it there. Just close out of there. There is a wizard option as well, which I mentioned before too, so I'll just show you that as well. So if I click, I'm going to have a look at Kev's Cakes. We'll have a quick look at the activity just to see what that looks like at the moment. So within here, we have got a payment on account, which is outstanding of £50. And a bit further above that, we've got a purchase invoice for £50, which is also outstanding there. So if I close that, we'll go into our supplier payment window and we'll select our supplier from the drop down, which brings those up on here for me. So you might have, obviously, in this window here, we do only have the 2 transactions. You might have a window which has got sort of lines and lines of transactions, and this is just to sort of make it a bit quicker for you. So if we click on Wizard at the top, and it gives these options. So within the wizard, we can pay all invoices, so just pay them all off together. We can allocate credit notes to invoices. We can allocate payments on account to invoices, which is what I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to be allocating my payment on account to an invoice, or I can just post a payment on account only. So say I've made a deposit for something, or for a customer has sent us a deposit, you can post a payment on account if it's not ready to be allocated to anything yet. So if I select the option allocate payments on account to invoices, and I'm going to click next. In here, it'll give me the option to change the account. So it pre-selects the one that you're already in. So we're in Kev's Cakes. It's got that one selected. If you think, actually, no, I'm in the wrong one here, I need to change that, you can just select it from the drop-down box and that'll change it for you. When I click allocate, it's going to allocate those together for me. Like I say, you might have a lot more in your window on there. So this one's quite a quick one because it's just the 2. It doesn't allocate anything until you click save though. So remember, this box here needs to be shown as 0 on there because we're not making any payments. We're not receiving any sort of money on there. It's just allocating them. And I'm going to click save. And then if we go back and have a look, go to Kev's Cakes again, and now there's nothing because those have been allocated. So there's now nothing outstanding there. Close out of that one there. So Nick's just asked the question, why is his unallocate button grayed out on there? So we can unallocate from the activity window, but you can also unallocate from the transaction window as well. So there might be a couple of reasons why this is grayed out, because we can see it's grayed out on this one here. And that one is because this is a bank receipt. So bank receipts, bank payments, journals, for example, you wouldn't be allocating those to anything, or it may just be that your transaction hasn't been paid yet and it hasn't been allocated to anything, and that would also mean it's grayed out. So anything that it would only become available and you'd be able to highlight it on there when you can actually unallocate something in the background. You can also see what's been allocated. So I'll just show you in the transactions window as well. I'm just going to click on number at the top so it puts it all in order for me. And I'll scroll down to the bottom, just to the recent transactions that we've just posted there. But you can have a look and see what's been allocated to where from here as well. So say you've got a sales invoice, you know it's been paid. We can see in the column here it's been paid, but you don't know what's been used to pay it. If you double click on it, it'll open up this window, gives you more information on the actual invoice itself. We can see the item details line for the invoice on there. If I click edit, and that's opened on another window, so I'll just drag that across. And it gives us payment allocation information. So we can see it was paid off with a credit note on there. And there's further details here, but it does cut it off a little bit. If you click on edit again, you'll get another little window, which I'll pull over. And this gives us information about the sales, the credit note that's been used to pay it off. So we can see that it was £100 from a credit note on there with the number of the transaction 1580. That one's right next to it here. We can see that transaction line is just there. But if it's something that's not next to it within the actual the transaction listing on there, you could just, you can search for it, so then you can go and find it and see what's been used to pay that. So just a little tip there if you're not too sure what's been used to or what's been allocated to a particular transaction. So I'll keep this open just for a little bit longer because I can see that you are keeping Michael busy there, just answering some of those questions. You will also get a recording of today's session around about an hour's time by email. So if you do want to watch it back at your own pace, or give it to a colleague to watch as well who hasn't been able to make watching it today live, then that'll be available. You'll get that in about an hour's time via email. But as promised, I've also included some links to some useful guides as well, just on our help centre. So you can visit sage.co.uk/help. or just by downloading today's slides and clicking on the links here. But if you're using things like CIS, for example, there are some additional rules around allocations, but all the information's just on the link here, just on our help centre as well. But also there's more information on what we've covered today as well. So things like unallocating transactions and how to identify allocated transactions as well. There's also a really good guide on why you can't unallocate transactions as well, which we sort of briefly touched on before. You can access our webinars page as well. It's sage.co.uk/webinars. All the past recordings are free to view on here as well, with signing up for our upcoming webinars. The link's just on the slide for you there as well. And currently we are running a badge series of webinars for our report designer, covering 7 topics there. So those run throughout October, and I think they're just finishing up. There is a quiz this week as well for it too, but it's just to introduce you to the workings and functionality of the report designer for Sage 50 accounts. And just while we do finish answering those last few questions, I just want to let you know that back by popular demand is our one-to-one bespoke training sessions. So these are block hour sessions, which are over Teams with one of our trainers who can provide training and answer your questions around how you want to use your software. So it might be that you just want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it, or you might have new starters who you want to get up to speed on using the software. But if it does sound like it'll be something that's going to be useful for you, if you just pop us an email just at the email address shown on the slide there, and then we can get back in touch with you just to discuss that further. But it's just that email address, lsenablement1@365sage.net. Well, that does bring us to the end of today's session around allocating and unallocated transactions. So you will get a survey when leaving today's session, and I'd love it if you could fill it in just with any feedback, or if you've got any comments around what else you'd like to see a webinar on perhaps. But I do hope today that the quick learn has been helpful for you, and thank you for attending as well. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. But I'm just going to pop it on mute now at the moment. I'm just going to have a look at those questions, because I can see we are still just finishing answering the last few questions on there. So just while we're doing that. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's session. If there's any questions outstanding on there, we will be replying just via email to you. But that is the end of today's session. So thank you very much for attending today.